We live? We're good to go?
Hi.
All right, we're good to go.
Hey, thank you all for coming. Hey, what's going on, everyone? My name is Carlos Luna. I want to welcome everyone here and everyone watching right now to New Game Master Month panel that we have going on here. I'll be the host and moderator of this stream. And if you're not familiar with New Game Master Month, don't worry. I'm here to explain it to you. New Game Master Month gives you what you need to run your first game, basically. So inspiration, advice, and a step-by-step process that guides prospective game masters up to and through their first game. Each January, they run a month-long seminar in the form of twice weekly posts. Each session will take you through a step or two, one or two step process with a brief lesson on an aspect of game mastering, followed by some quick, enjoyable activities that actually get you ready to run your first game. Now, I am surrounded by fantastic creators right now, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves, starting on my left, right here with Noah. Noah, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Noah Lloyd. I'm the publishing assistant at Pelgrane Press. Pelgrane publishes a lot of cool games, including collections like #Feminism and Honey and Hot Wax, which are kind of more experimental collections. And then we're known for a D20 fantasy game called 13th Age. And what I'm talking about today is Trail of Cthulhu, which is an investigative horror role-playing game set in the cosmic mythos of Lovecraft.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Noah. Right below Noah, Shane.
I'm Shane Ivey with Arc Dream Publishing, and we publish Delta Green, which is a modern-day, extraordinarily bleak and nihilistic and terrible role-playing game that nobody should play if you've got any kind of issues with your mental health. No, I'm just kidding. It's loads of fun. It's that kind of dark fun that you get from everybody being miserable and everything going wrong, but it's not happening to you. It's happening to your characters, so it's okay. But that's Delta Green. And I don't know. I'm going to talk about that more later, I guess.
Awesome. Thank you for the great marketing strategy, Shane.
Let's get everyone braced. Let's make sure we're all ready for it.
I really like that. We have an eclectic group of people here. Below me, Sean, take it away.
Hey all. I'm Sean Nittner. I use he, him pronouns. I am here representing Evil Hat Productions. We produce the Fate line of games, including most recently Fate of Cthulhu, but also Fate Core and all the Fate worlds. And we also have a number of Forged in the Dark and Powered by the Apocalypse games. And the one that I'm going to be talking about is, let's see if I can do my green screen magic right. No, there we go. Monster of the Week, which is the game of like Roadhouse Hunters. It's if you are familiar with Supernatural, or Buffy the Vampire Slayer, or any of the, there are things that go bump in the night, and we are the things that bump against them, sort of genres of games. That's Monster of the Week. It's a PBTA game. It's powered by the Apocalypse, and so it's going to have a lot of familiarity to folks that have played Apocalypse World or Dungeon World, or Monster Hearts, or any of the scores of many great PBTA games out there. But it also has a lot of built-in infrastructure specifically around the episodic format, around this is literally a Monster of the Week game. In this game, there should be a monster, and at the end of this game, the monster should not be there anymore by some measure or another.
There is a monster and there is a week.
Yeah, exactly. And the week is the session of play, right? So
look how many weeks I get. You open the book, look at how many weeks.
Well, it does. In fact, the supplement for Tome of Mystery is just like, among other things, a compilation of a lot of mysteries that are lots of weeks, lots of monsters. So yeah, I'll be talking about how we've implemented a lot of that in a little bit.
Fantastic. Next up, Todd, why don't you tell us a little about what your game is? I haven't been able to figure it out yet.
I'm Todd Gardner. I'm the director of organized play for Chaosium Incorporated. We make a whole line of games that are based upon a percentile dice system we call basic role-playing. So we make Call of Cthulhu, we make Runequest, we make Pendragon. We have other games coming up, but I wanted to share my passion for Runequest. Let's go that way. that is my home game, and it's nice to offer a little contrast from the horror to go into the Bronze Age mythic fantasy, high magic, high fantasy, gods are real, and everyone has the ability to cast magic. So let's take a look at that.
Fantastic. And last but not least, Charles Ryan. Take it away.
Yep. Yeah, so I'm Charles Ryan. I'm with Monte Cook Games, and the game we'll be talking about here, and the game that we've used in New Game Master Month is Numenera, which was our sort of flagship line. It's driven by the Cypher system, which we also produce as a game line you can use for anything. We also make other games such as Invisible Sun and No Thank You Evil, to go to two far ends of the spectrum of game themes. I'm also the creator of New Game Master Month. We've been running it since like 2014 or something like that.
And thank you for that.
You're quite welcome. Yeah, originally it was just a Monte Cook Games production, but we were like, why doesn't every publisher take part of this? So we've opened it up and sort of broken it away from MCG specifically over the course of the last 4 or 5 years. And some of our partners here on screen have been with us for about that much time, and some are new this year. I personally am an avid gamer, and I'm sure that I'm not unique. I'm sure everybody on the screen is sort of the same way. But like of everything you see there, I have not played Monster of the Week, but everything else that's here, I have played personally, sometimes many times.
Well, I will show you how to do it, Charles.
Excellent. I look forward to it. Cool.
Thank you so much. I love that cross game synergy that we had going on there. But yeah, okay, great. So if you're just tuning in, this is what we're doing. We're going to be going around counterclockwise, starting with Noah, and we're going to be learning a little bit about these games through Roll20. They're going to be sharing their screens and kind of explaining explaining their game to you, maybe not super in depth, but just so you can get an idea. A lot of times you'll see games on shelves or games, on marketplaces, and, you will have to judge a book by its cover. And sometimes that's not the best way to find out exactly what is the most bang for your buck or what's the most fun that your group, because your group better than we do, might have. So let's start with Noah. Noah, take it away. Tell us a little bit about your game and what we can expect on Roll20 with that. Yeah.
Well, I'll give you kind of the quick pitch for Trail of Cthulhu in a little bit more detail than I did at the top of the show. So it runs, and then I'll actually jump into Roll20. So Trail of Cthulhu runs in the Gumshoe engine, which takes kind of as its premise that in an investigative mystery scenario, it's not fun to not get the clue, right? You walk into a room and you make a roll to try and find the hidden dossier you've been looking for or whatever, and you don't find it, and you can kind of hit a brick wall. What Gumshoe decides to do is say, okay, we're not going to roll for the clues that you need to find. Things you might roll for would be additional information, things that flesh the story out more, or if you get into a fight, right? There's still combat in Trail of Cthulhu, and in all of the other games we have built on the Gumshoe engine. So I will go ahead and now share my screen. So here we are in Roll20. This is a module called Midnight Sub Rosa. It was originally written by Ruth Tillman, collected in our scenario collection Out of the Woods. And when you, if you purchase this module and pop in, this is the first thing you'll see. You'll see this page, which is just kind of our cover page. So we kind of decided, we've got our little horror corner over here that I've realized. And then we're each going to go through kind of a different aspect of some of the basics of Roll20 and hopefully build on each other's work as we go.
Right.
So what do you do from here, right? How do I get out of the cover? You click on, and this is something that only you can see as the GM, right? We're assuming that you're interested in being a new GM. If you click on this page toolbar, it will show you all of the pages that are available in either this module or the game that you've built from the ground up. So kind of the two important things to get here, and I know that I have made this mistake more than once, is when I click into a new page. So I'll click here into our map for where did it go? There it is. If I click into the map for the town where this scenario takes place, my players actually haven't come with me yet. And there's a very good reason for this, which is that I might want to be doing stuff on another page that my players haven't come to yet, right? So we've got this, you can see this derby house here where, maybe I want to populate this with monsters before my players come into it. Something's changed from an earlier scene and I need to rearrange something. My players can be having a conversation. I can pop in here and do something. But this little flag here, which says players on it, surprisingly enough, is where my players are still stationed. So if I want them to pop onto the Rosa map with me, I just drag it over there, and now my players are seeing the map along with myself. I thought I would also point out real quick something kind of fun that you can do in Roll20, which is playing with the layers a little bit. So here, and I full, what's the word?
Full disclosure.
Yeah, thank you. Full disclosure.
Ooh, that was good. Look at that. I was like full Monty. I don't know what the.
So for full disclosure, I made this module in Roll20, and so this is one of the things that I was like, one of the little tricks I came up with that I was kind of proud of, which is building the map into kind of different layers here. So everything that you can see in blue, and let me make this closer to what I'll explain what I just did here in a second. So this is what your players will see when they pop in. They'll see the blue location names and the numbers according to the locations. Now, what I've just done, we have this GM overlay opacity here. When I drop this all the way to 0, you'll see these elements have dropped to 0 as well because we reduced their opacity. And each of these elements is on what's called our GM overlay. So this is our little layers selection. If I'm here in objects and tokens, folks are going to talk about that later. If I click into map, I can actually drag the main map around. Or if I click into GM info, then I can select something like the site of the old De La Poer house here, which is a location that we don't want the players to know about when they first start playing, right? This is a location that they'll discover. So I can right click on it, go into layer, pop this into my map layer, and now it's visible for my players. It's something they've discovered. So this is just kind of one of just to point out a couple of quick things that you can do, which is using multiple pages and then playing with layer selection a little bit.
Yeah. I like to think of those page sections. Like if you're new to Roll20 and you're just getting started, I like to think of the page section. Think of it as like different tables. Like imagine you're in this big gymnasium that's just filled with tables that you can add anything to. Like in this example, we have 3. Your players are at one table playing the game, but at any time, and then that's where the banner is. But at any time you can run to another table real quick, start setting up your other game without them on it, and then carry them over with the banner to be at the new table. And the same thing kind of goes with the layers and how you explain that as well, where we have, imagine you're playing at a table with a plate of glass. The map you're putting on the map layer, and then you put a plate of glass. So nothing really, you can't really affect what's below that plate of glass on that map layer. Like your players don't have the option of like accidentally trying to grab their token and moving your map anywhere, right? It's protected because your players play on the objects and tokens layer. That's what everyone sees. Right. But you as a GM, being omnipotent and godlike, you play on a GM layer where you can see just a little bit higher than everyone else, but they can't see what's on that layer. So that's a great way to organize it. You save all your nice stuff so people can't mess it up on the map layer, and then your players play on the objects layer, and then you see everything in the GM overlay.
Yeah. So I think at this point we were going to pass it along to Shane.
Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about before we go to Shane, why don't you tell us a little bit about the game that we're seeing on screen here?
Yeah, for sure. So this is the scenario, like I mentioned, is called Midnight Sub Rosa. And there are like very minor spoilers, I guess, that you can see on the screen at the moment. And the premise is that you're a group of investigators who have been brought into this small town of Rosa where there was a theft. Someone stole an antique diary by supposedly a necromancer of the 18th century, and you have to find it. I mean, what could go wrong, right? 18th century necromancers, there's not, the world of Lovecraft and Cthulhu monsters, I'm sure it's all fine. So the way that the scenario gets laid out, you pop in here, you'll have general information in this is our journal tab. You can read all about, this is kind of the background about what's going on. Maybe ghouls have something to do with the scenario. It might be that Ruth Tillman is known for that kind of thing. It might not be. And then all of our scenes are collected here. One of the interesting things that Gumshoe is kind of known for, again, which Trail of Cthulhu is built in that engine, is what we call the scene flow diagram. So each scene it's written kind of like a choose your own adventure, where in each scene the different clues point to other scenes, which you then decide your own path through. And of course, all the scenes are going to be slightly different depending on how the prior ones have played out. So each of these scenes here that we see in our scene flow diagram, and then there's a short description about what the diagram means at the moment, is going to pop up in these scenes a little lower as you take your investigators, your players, your party through the scenario.
Great.
Can I throw something in here quickly before we move on to the next step? And that is that some of our viewers that are watching this maybe participated in New Game Master Month, and maybe some of them didn't and don't have this piece of background. But as you go through New Game Master Month, as you go through each of the steps, there's sort of like general advice about what we're talking about, what the topic is of that step. But then there's a little tab on the page for each of the games that are participating in the program, and that tells you what to do for a specific adventure you're going to run for that game. So in the case of Trail of Cthulhu, Midnight Sub Rosa was the adventure that was featured in their content on New Game Master Month. So that's why we're talking about it here. This is like if you followed through the program, you would be running this adventure because you would have followed all the steps to prepare to run this adventure.
Right.
So just throwing out there for a little bit of background for people who are new to what the program's doing.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Thank you.
Oh, we got a question from you.
From
Waterblue. It said, what's the best tool to build a diagram like that? So I think the actual map itself.
So maps like this, I find are often, it's going to be a variety of tools that you have access to. Like each of these maps were probably built slightly differently. I think that the Rosa map was likely drawn by hand, scanned at high resolution, and then the text and some of the arrows, that kind of thing, added in Illustrator or Photoshop. And then the Derby House was almost certainly drawn in Illustrator, in Adobe Illustrator. You don't have to use, Adobe can be very expensive, I certainly know. You don't have to use a big fancy program like that. Roll20, for instance, has map drawing software right in it. So, and maybe I can just show this off real quick before we jump off. You have Draw Shape, you have Freehand. I wind up using the Freehand drawing tool a lot because I'm not ashamed of having really terrible art. Because my players better be picturing everything in their head. So let's say
red squiggle is the ogre for sure. You can see it in your mind's eye.
Yeah. Let's say here on the first floor of this house, we wanted to add a secret room or something. I am just going to draw it right here and put a little door right there. And now my players know that there's this room here. And you could do that as a reveal, right? You could be improvising. Someone suggests an idea early on in the game and you're like, oh yeah, I should put that somewhere else. So you can make quick little modifications like this. You can also use, there are other free drawing programs online that you can find with a quick Google search for sure.
In Roll20, definitely the Freehand, the polygon tool will allow you to make the straight lines to actually, if you want to do something that simple, it's very easy and great to do on the fly. If you're looking to do more of that diagram, you could probably figure out a way to do it on Roll20. Personally, I use a program called draw.io. It connects with your Google account. So I think it connects somehow with Google Drive, but it'll do the diagram flow charts that you had for your your what was it? Your scene.
The scene flow diagram.
Yeah. Your scene flow, it'll do that, and the little arrows will actually clip together. It'll click on, so you can move those bubbles around in draw.io.
Yeah, and if you're interested in designing your own scene flow diagram, so let's say you don't want to pick up Midnight Sub Rosa, and why wouldn't you? But if you don't, and you want to kind of design your own mystery ahead of time, then there's a program you can use. What I think it was, I don't have the stream up at the moment on my screen. I think it was Carlos who was just talking about. I use Miro, which is Miro,
yes,
to make little scene flow diagrams. I've also used in the past, I'm going to have to double check what it is called real quick. Twine, right? I was wanting to call it Twitch, but that's what we're on right now. If you've ever played like an actual text choose your own adventure in HTML, those are often built in Twine, which is a free engine that you can, like a free game development engine that you can download. And I will use that as a way to kind of jump around in different parts of the story too.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Noah.
Yeah.
This was fantastic. We're going to send it over to Shane. Shane, why don't you tell us a little bit about Delta Green and show us on Roll20 what it's all about.
Yeah, you bet. Okay, so give me just a second to share that screen. Why I didn't do this about 2 minutes ago, I don't know.
No worries.
It's okay.
But
that's why we're all here to vamp. So Water said thanks, friends. Anyone else in chat, if you have questions really for any of us, we're going to do this round robin format, but the intent is really that if questions come up, we're happy to bounce around and dive deeper into things that you're interested in. We got plenty of time, so yeah, please feel free to hit us up with questions.
Yeah, if you got questions on the games, if you have a question on, right now, Delta Green, if you see something as Shane flips through it, they're like, oh, what's that? Or how does that mechanic work? Or how's that different from other stuff? Let us know in the chat. And that's what they're here for. Take it away,
Sure.
Shane.
Yeah, you bet. So Delta Green is its own flavor of horror investigative game. And the thing that differentiates it is from Trail of Cthulhu, for instance, which is a fantastic game, is the focus in Delta Green is a little less on the process of finding the clues and piecing the clues together, although that's important if you want your agents to survive, as much as the repercussions, that you face in play and the blowback that builds as you conduct these operations, because Delta Green, the organization in the game, is all about secrecy. You play agents who are sent to confront these horrible, unnatural evils and keep them from killing people, and then conceal it all so that nobody else discovers it and gets killed along the way. So you've got these layers of risks of terror and suspense and conspiracy, and this kind of overarching sense that anything can go wrong at any time, especially if you're not extremely careful. And so that's sort of the gist of what the whole game is about. It's all about mood. It's all about sort of trying to get that mood at the table of suspense and fear, and getting the players every once in a while genuinely in the heads of their characters, in these awful moments, and they can get that little chill. That's the gold standard. So what we do in what we set up in Roll20 is we have a character sheet that you can use to generate any campaign you want, of course, and then we have a module that is going to be available with any luck, let's say Monday, and that is an adaptation of Need to Know, which is our free quick start guide that you can download as a PDF anytime you want, and you could also buy it as a little $10 full color, very pretty paperback for your collection. And so the Need to Know module, I'll kind of walk through a little bit about what's involved there, just to give you a sense of how it works, right? So with the module, like most of these modules, is built around handouts, right? So you go to the handout option in your menu up at the top of the Roll20 screen, and select what you're wanting to look at as the game master. Some of these elements are available to everybody. Some of them are available only to the GM. And if you just, as the GM, if you're just sort of, or the handler, as we cheekily call you, if you kind of go through there, you can very rapidly get a sense of how the game works and what the experience is likely to be like for your players. We put some legalese there, which is a fascinating thing.
And Shane, if I can interrupt momentarily, if you open one of those, I want to point out that there's a show to players button on all those little windows, and then that will put it into the journal of the players as well as pop a window open for them.
Yeah, and that's super useful. Yeah, and so when you as the GM, you can build as many handouts as you want, right? So if you can, and that's something that you'll want to do running your own games. You want lots and lots of handouts. At least I do. And but yeah, you can show that to players, or you can go into the handout and get really particular about who gets to see it, right? So if you want only one of your players to have a bunch of details, then you can customize that, which is extremely convenient. So with the need to know module, we've got the handouts broken up into the rule book, which is the core rules of the game, and advice on how to be a handler the Delta Green way, and how to if you're a player, here are the tips that we recommend that you adopt, so everybody's on the same page and creating the same kind of experience at the table, and stuff about creating characters and just the basics of how the game system works. Delta Green uses a very simple percentile system. It's going to be familiar with anybody who's played a lot of these games over the years. They've all kind of come and gone and adapted from each other and built off of each other. And so our biggest wrinkle is with a tweak to the way sanity works, which is it's still kind of a hit point sort of a thing for your brain. But we added rules for bonds with your character to represent what's left in the real world that deteriorates as your character falls apart. So you've got the rulebook handouts, and then the characters themselves, right? So we have a half a dozen pre-made characters that you can start with, and then there's advice on how to customize each of them, suggested backgrounds for each of them, so your players can just pick their favorite and change them however they want and start playing. So the character sheet then has everything that you need to play the game, right, as a player, and the most important things on there for gameplay, like you've got your personal stuff, your character's name and background, or whatever detail you want to fill into that. But the meat of gameplay is in using your stats and using your skills, right? And those are all percentile rolls. And the way the character sheet is set up is, let's say, Agent Cornwell desperately needs to break down a door in order to not get eaten by this caustic smoke monster that's pursuing her. Of course. Then she's going to make a strength roll. So you just click on the thing, a little pop-up comes up asking if you want to modify that in some way. And if you don't, you just hit the thing and hit submit, and then that tells you your result. She had a 55% chance. She rolled a 56. She failed. She's about to get eaten.
She failed by 1%. Oh no!
I know, it's tragic.
I mean, what a shame.
It's very close.
It
was that brain fart where you it's a push door, but she was pulling the entire time.
Yeah. I feel like the monster would have something to say about her being the top 1% of.
Yeah. Yeah, the monster's a socialist. I don't know if you know that.
But the same thing works, with sanity, right? The sanity rules are percentile based as well, based on your score. The luck roll, and there is a luck roll in Delta Green, but it has nothing to do with your character's abilities or anything. It's always just a flat 50%, unless the GM says there's a modifier. If this is a really unlucky moment for you or whatever, then, but that all works essentially the same way. and so it's dead easy. There's you get the results in if you're in a fight that has its own rules and things built in, and it automatically gives you a button in the chat window to roll for damage if you happen to succeed with an attack roll.
That's nice.
So it's very simple to use, and it puts the anything that's as a shortcut, anything that's green on this character sheet is something core to the mechanics of gameplay, right? And so I've found it's really easy and fun to sort of sort through and find what you need. And if your character, if Cornwell manages to survive the acidic smoke monster, then she's probably going to lose some sanity from being subjected to such horribleness and not being able to do anything about it. And as you lose sanity in Delta Green from being helpless, then you start clicking away on these adaptation check marks. And when you get to 3 of them, then congratulations, you no longer lose, you automatically succeed at sanity rolls that are related to being helpless, but your power score is going to drop precipitously because you've kind of had to adapt yourself to not being able to control your world anymore. It's all very tragic and
sounds like it.
So Wonderblue, Shane, Wonderblue is asking, are the Delta Green beginner game and modules available in the Roll20 marketplace? If not, is that something planned in the future? And I think you were just saying it's like almost there, but I don't know if that was.
Oh, right, yeah. So need to know, which is what you're looking at here, is essentially the thing that's waiting for that is somebody I'm communicating with people at Roll20 to push the last couple of buttons to make it available to the public. So I hope that maybe day after tomorrow, even we might see that out there. But very quickly, if I can go through the we were talking earlier about the pages that are available for the Game Master.
Yeah.
Right. And so as the Game Master, they have let me get rid of the example of play. As the Game Master, there's a opening page that if you want to move the players over to get started, that'll kind of orient them a little bit. And it can orient the new Game Master as well, right? It gives you tips on which of these handouts to look at first, to review first, to kind of get your bearings. Because there is an awful lot of information here, even if this is only adapting a quick start book that's 48 pages, right? It's a lot of data if you're new to it. So we have this initial welcome page that you can use to get your bearings. And then there's a private one for the Game Master that gives you instructions on using the other pages once the game is live in front of the characters. And the way these maps work is kind of fun. You can change up the backgrounds on the maps that the players see if you need to. So in there, let's say you're investigating the apartment of Clyde Bauman, who was this retired Delta Green agent who died, and the group is worried that he may have left horrible things behind for his family to find, and you've got to go there and stop that from happening before they find him. If you go to the map layer and then right-click here, you can choose. This is essentially in Roll20 terms. This is a multi-sided object. This map you're looking at, or this photo you're looking at, rather, and so you can choose which side to show the players. And let's expand that so you know what you're seeing. And so if you want to switch there to show the players a photo of the inside of the apartment, you can do that.
Very creative use of that tool.
Yeah, it's fun. I was really happy with the
We stole that, Shane. We stole that.
That's
very clever. It's a real good.
Our friend Marco Marinari, and I apologize to Marco if I got his last name wrong, came up with that. So, but yeah, I would love to adapt this to future scenarios, of which there are about 1.5 million for Delta Green already out there.
There's a question in chat about can I modify everything once it's if I buy the module? My general experience, but Shane, tell me specifically for Delta Green, is anything that's text-based that is generated in Roll20 like a handout, the text on there, you can modify those. But images that have been imported into Roll20 are relatively fixed. Is that?
I think so. I'm not going to commit to that because I actually don't know for certain if that's the case with images. I know with the text, yeah, you can absolutely go in. So the other third of this of this collection of handouts is the adventure proper, right? So if you're in the Bauman's apartment section, then as the game master, if you need to like here, they've got a summary here that the players can see. That's just these 3 lines. So if you need to add something, something to that, and tell the players, roll sanity, and I'll tell you why in a minute, then you can do that, right? And just adapt, and you can easily monkey with all of that stuff. Changing out the images, I think you can. We might have better experts who are smarter than me that can tell us.
Yeah, you can definitely change out the images. You can actually just make new pages as well.
Oh, so
if you have different scenes instead of the apartment, maybe they meet at a lake house. You can just make one and then, switch it out and move things around. However you need to adapt it, you should be able to.
Oh, yeah, and that ability to customize things is one of my favorite parts of using the platform because. I'm as a game master, I'm all the time tweaking. I don't think I've ever run even one of my games as it's written out of the book. So, so I'm always kind of tweaking things and adding things, and then, but yeah, you can generate your own. You can change things up. It's very, very very flexible.
It's always some people get overwhelmed moving to digital and they think they need a lot of stuff, but I mean you can literally if it's a scene and it doesn't matter about like a layout, a floor plan layout or anything specific like that, just having something in the background that people can, an image that they all have in common and they're all looking at, even if you want to get a certain vibe across, just to, like, it kind of like sets a mood, right? Like it sets the scene and it's a little bit they can get your players into it. It's just one more tool to get your players into that reality.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, for example, with Delta Green, there have been games I've run where it was sort of tactically complex enough that it was useful to have a map that showed tokens representing characters and how far apart they were, But usually that's not necessary. It's just the focus is a little different than that. So most games you can play just with photos like this, or at most sort of an area map drawn from Google Earth or something, and everything else you're describing in the conversation between you and the players. And you don't, and in fact, in most cases, trying to put tokens on the map and have players move them around and pay attention to them can kind of slow things down, in this kind of game, in a way that it becomes a bug for this game, where it's a feature for D&D, in your more traditional adventure fighting games. So, so I think I've eaten up everybody's time now. And,
no, that was great.
You showed a lot.
No, that's awesome. Thank you, Shane.
No problem.
Who's next on the list? It's Weeks. Sean, Monster of the Week. Take it away. Let's hear about it.
Hey, I feel like we're playing this sort of like continuum of agency a little bit, where like in Trail of Cthulhu, you're very mundane, people trying to investigate a mystery. And Monster in Delta Green, you have a lot more power, but you're also like beholden to, like, there's so many things to fear. Monster of the Week, you're kicking down doors. I mean, there's still monsters, right? I
think a lot of kicking down doors happens in Trail of Cthulhu.
That's true. I mean, to be fair, in most Cthulhu games, people have realized, like, it's better to shoot the Shoggoth than to try and understand it, right? But Monster of the Week, it's a PBTA game powered by the Apocalypse, and as I sort of said earlier, it's I'm going to look away. I apologize, I'm not looking looking away from people. I'm just looking at my screen. So in a second,
that's how it works.
Way my window's lit out. But the keeper is going to present a mystery of some monster of the week presenting, and the hunters are going to go address that. And Michael Sands, the author, he did a first edition initially. And then Evil Hat picked it up for the second edition, which we expanded. We redid the art. We did a lot of cleanup. We added new playbooks, and we've added a supplement, Tome of Mysteries, as well. And what we did after Tome of Mysteries came out was we took those 30 some odd mysteries between the core book and Tome of Mysteries, and we put them into Roll20. And so that's what I'll show here. So let's pull this up. Let's add that stream. There we go. So you'll notice that there's some striking similarities between our format and Delta Green format, almost as if we saw the way you did it, Shane, and basically copied a lot of that stuff. So a lot
flattered is what.
Yes.
Sure.
I'm amplifying your thunder.
As a person, you should be flattered. As a businessman, you should find a lawyer.
Yeah,
it's good enough for True Detective. It's more than good enough for you guys. Go ahead.
So similarly, we have a lot of pages. So in this, we have a page for the starting page, which is this opening one. It gives instructions to the keepers, to the hunters, and just some resources in general. It's got a few tokens that we put on there. We made a few custom token markers as well for our token for the set, so you could show if you've got a -1 forward, a +1 forward, if you're bleeding, if you're dead, if you've got armor, and if so, how much it is. You see that Taz here has 1 armor, and so that's illustrated there. But for the most part, these are just a couple tokens. There's some sample groups of hunters that we've got, and you can of course make
are those some custom token labels?
Yeah, those are custom token markers that we added.
Yeah, that's great. I haven't done that. That's very cool.
Yeah, you put a 512 by 512 image, which as you can see gets shrunk down very small, so you don't want anything with a lot of detail. But the token markers, for instance, if Taz now would have +1 forward on this roll, it's a good way for us to remember that he's got it. And a cool thing that people may or may not know that's built into Roll20 is that if you hover over a token marker and you type a number on your keyboard, it will show that token marker with that number. So that's what we use for armor.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah. So if Taz has 1 armor, I just mouse over and put 1 armor. But if he had 2 armor, I would do a 2 instead. So, and then if you click on the token marker again, it disappears. Beam is like, what? So yeah, it's always good to know when you're dead. I don't mean to pick on Taz here, but womp womp. If he doesn't make it, there we go. And those are just some of the statuses that you can have in Monster of the Week. So the next page is what we call the Keepers Crypt, and this, very much like the Delta Green, is where we kind of introduce people to a few of the technologies. This is we have plenty of handouts to go over things, but this is where we wanted to show you not only what features we have, but also how to use them. So we have a couple countdown clocks that we tell you, this is actually a table, a rollable table, and here's how you use it. We give the instructions, and then these are the actual rollable tables here, so you can choose between the different states that the different states that the mystery is in. Well, Monster of the Week, like any PBTA game, it has a sort of snowballing principle that the players will sort of generate a lot of their own troubles, either because their actions would naturally generate trouble, naturally generate consequences, or because they attempt something and they get a mixed result or a failure result that then sort of spills trouble. But Monster of the Week adds another layer that's just basically like, if they do nothing, trouble keeps advancing no matter what. If the players just say like, well, it's too dangerous, we're not going to do it, then you just keep sort of ticking the this countdown clock along, and we'll see when we get into an adventure that each Monster of the Week, each scenario has things that happen at each of those ticks. So at dusk, this bad thing will happen, and that can be because the players attempted to stop it and they failed. That could be because they didn't take action. That's because they focused somewhere else. Like, it can be lots of different reasons, but this is sort of our little countdown clock. But yeah, we talk about the token markers, the backgrounds, which I'll show in a second. but that's essentially the same thing, that we have our backgrounds be, you kind of advance as you go through the adventure. Like we start it with like very little information, and as more information is gleaned, we kind of move forward. And then these relationship maps, which isn't particular to the adventure, it's particular to the keepers. So I'll pull one of those up. We show, the Crit Show is a great podcast that plays once a week. They've played hundreds of episodes of it now. And they generously gave us their likeness to use in our modules. So
Nice.
TJ, Taz, and Jake are the hunters in it. And this little relationship map shows their relationships to each other, which you build in the beginning when you're first creating your hunters. We've got a three hunter model, a 4-hunter model that has my home group, the Agents of Sisra. This is just our own personal Monster of the Week group and everyone's relationships with each other. And then a 5-hunter group as well. And this one's blank, but it doesn't really matter whether they're filled or blank. These can all just be filled in by grabbing your tokens and dropping them in and making little text things to write between them. But we wanted you to be that sounds pretty stressful for the PCs. I don't know what that was referencing to, so I'm sorry, Max. Maximum Design. I missed when you typed that. So let me know what was stressful. Maybe I can talk about it more. So yeah, the Keeper Crypt. Its goal is to essentially get you acclimated with the module, tell you all of the features that are in it. We've got a couple more tokens here. And then we get into the particular scenarios, the particular adventures. We have 6 of them per module. This is the mystery collection number 1. We've got them available as individual collections, and we've got a bundle that has all of them. But if we go to, say, 802-701 AD by Mark Tiger, it's an adventure, we can see a couple things that we've got in this scenario. So one, this sort of dimly lit thing, just like Noah showed, we have GM layer tokens and player level. And so we kind of intentionally kept the opacity lowish, just so you would know right off the bat, oh, that's GM layer. But if you pull it up, you can see all this. This is what the GM sees, the players do not. So that's all of these tokens to begin with, and what happens at each stage during day. The Morlocks steal the red matter reactor from the green porcelain palace, and then once you hit shadows, the Morlocks raid the Eloy compound. Like as Shane and others were saying, like, this is intentionally on the GM layer, so this is something that you can use and infer, take, throw away, modify. The players are never going to see it. From the player's perspective, this is what the map looks like. All they're seeing is the basic map and the countdown clock. So they know how far this is coming. They know that things are moving, and they're going to know from your description of what goes on as you tell them these bad things happen, but they're not going to actually see the shorthand for it. Similarly, those tokens, we purposely put those in the GM layer so that the GM sort of had them handy. They were at the ready, but they weren't visible until you want them to be. So if you want to switch one of these tokens, if you want to show the giant millipede, you're going to right click on it, choose layer, and say, drop that up into the token layer, and bam, now it's visible to the players. And if we were showing sort of player view, that's all. We kind of have these tokens like ready to throw at people. Whoops, let me get into objects and token layer so I can move it around. Now on the map layer, we did a similar thing where the map is a rollable table as well, and it's sort of meant to, you can dial it all the way back to this beginning one, which is nothing. If you don't want to show literally any image at all, you can show nothing. Also, this is a transparent layer. So if you have your own image that you want, you can put it behind this on the map, and so you can have your own thing, but still have like our nice Monster of the Week frame. So you can make your own. We also have a version that doesn't have an adventure name on the top, so you can make your own custom adventures completely if you'd like. But the idea of this is like, okay, you're not showing anything, or you're only showing what maybe an image you created. And then we get to the starting one, which is meant to like not give too much away. You've suddenly been teleported into the future, but like we don't know what that means. You're going to start playing out, and as you learn more, we kind of have more of these stories. Okay, so now we see the Morlocks, and like they're raiding that are on the raid. Now we see that their stronghold. Sorry for anyone I'm giving away the spoilers here, but Morlocks are a threat in the story. And then finally inside we find Einstein. I think that's the image I'm going to show. Yes, we find the hollow Einstein that is like that. Can sort of explain. Yeah, spoilers is right.
You had me at Einstein.
Yeah, and this is just the GM can be moving these back and forth, and of course you could be bringing up other images as well. But our idea was that we want to have all of the art that we could offer to sort of have it at your fingertips. And the nice thing about using a rollable table instead of pages is that you're not doing the thing of being like, okay, let's make sure to bring everyone to this page. Now I move to that page and I have to bring them there. That's really useful if you kind of want to prep a page and then bring the players to it. But we often found like people have got their tokens on a page. We've put like drawn things on the page. We don't want to have to like try and port all that stuff over to another page that has a different background. So having those rollable tables is basically just like having one page, but with lots of images that you can show it as you like. The next thing that we've got that I think is pretty slick is Fred Hicks actually designed a character sheet. So if you look at the Hunter character sheet, it is, here's an example of a Hunter character sheet. It's got their stats, it's got their moves. You can roll in it as well. You can say I want to roll, bottle it up, and it'll ask you what stat you want to roll, and if you have a modifier, and it gives you the results. And cool, that's a mixed result. But if you rolled really well, I'll just give myself an incredible modifier. Boom, that's a success. We have different, and it tells you like what move you did, all that jazz. So these are, this is what you would expect. It's a character sheet.
I like those graphics. That's nice.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. We pulled some out of the book. Tim Denis was the designer who showed us how to build graphics into the roll results. It's real slick. Yeah. We have like 6- is real bad, and a crit is real good. I think the 6-, let's go minus. Do minus enough that someone will definitely fail. But we also have a little reminder: make sure to mark experience, because
right.
That's, you get a 6-, bad things happen, but you at least get XP out of it. So this is the Hunter sheet. If you expand the Hunter sheet, it has all the basic moves. So it's basically got a lot of the entire game kind of built into it. So you've got all the moves in the game, and you can even roll them if you want. But what I think really shines, where I want to give Fred mad props, is he made a sheet that also works for the adventures. So if we go to the sheet, it has a similar kind of we've got a little image, and we've got the hook. This is what the players might see. If you go into the character sheet stage, it has all of the locations all of the people. It's got the countdown clock as well. Unfortunately, there's no way to link this. If you click that here, it doesn't change on the desktop. There's no link there. But you've got essentially the entire adventure mapped out and things that you can collapse and expand, and you can even modify. Like the Morlock hordes have a harm stat, so you can be like, oh yeah, they took 5 harm, and that's really the only thing you can track. But it's because the character sheet, they're actually modifiable rather than a handout where you just be like, I have to make some marks on the sheet. And it's got their whole stat block, all the things that they can do, and the same thing for all the other characters and all the locations.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so
it's a great way to track it all in one place. Yeah.
But it's just like a whole adventure, and you can add in additional things. You can edit. Let's see, show edit. Yeah, if you click show edit, then you can go in here and you can change these things. You can add in any details, change any details, and then that gets tracked with the character sheet. Once you hit hide edit, then it collapses, and you can add in any of these elements. You can add in. I think it puts it right at the very bottom. So I'm going to add in an element. I'm going to say this is a monster, and then it gives me all the stats for the monster. Or I can say this is a location, and it gives me all the stats for the location. So if you're building your own adventures, all of the components that you might have for building a scenario are in there.
Great, that's nice.
Thank you. Yeah, and then the other thing is that Monster of the Week and most PBTA games work on a set of principles and moves. Like what should I be saying as a GM? A lot of people are like, I'm nervous to GM, I don't know what to do. And we have the Keepers reference here as well, which is like your agenda. Like, what is it? What is your job? Make the world seem real. Play to see what happens. Make the hunters' lives dangerous and scary, right? Like, what should I say? These are things to say. Say what, well, I skipped over principles. What are the principles of the game? Put horrors in everyday situation. Be a fan of the hunters. Nothing is safe. Everything is a threat. Like, and then what should I say? And then how do I do those? What are my moves? Separate people. Reveal future badness. Tell people things are happening off screen. So the whole principle of the game we kind of put in here as well. It's pretty dense. There's a lot in there, but we try to have all the reference for folks.
I like it. One great part about Roll20 is one great part about Roll20 and one part that new people on Roll20, one of the drawbacks for new people on Roll20 is that the workflow can be anything that you want it to be, right? So we find that some people might think like, oh, this doesn't work. This program doesn't work for what I'm trying to do. It's just like, well, that's because these are just tools. It's a whiteboard. It's a filing cabinet. It's like all these different things, all these different tools, and it is however you want to do it. And a lot of times you don't know what your best workflow is until you see other people's workflow. Like watching all. We just watched 3 different creators right now, and they all had 3 separate different workflows on like how they run their games, and like it's always so interesting. And I feel like one of the benefits of doing panels like this or like playing other games specifically on Roll20 is that you get to see those workflows. A lot of times we take for granted, the physical space of just being able to well, it's a book, so it goes on my bookshelf. It's just like, well, these are little handouts and they're digital, and I can make them this small or I can make them this big, or we can minimize it in the corner now. So it's just like how you store that information and how you make that readily available. It's so funny how impatient we are online, but how patient we are with physical things, right? Like if I can't find something in 2 seconds online, I'm like, this site is built so poorly, like after 2 seconds, but I will go leave this room, walk to my living room downstairs, pull a book out, flip through the pages, you know what I mean? Like spend a good 10 minutes looking for the same thing that would take me 2 seconds online. So I always find it really good when I'm setting up a game, set it up for like the workflow. And try to think of it that way rather than think of it like, well, what is it like in my physical space? Like, where my book is here, my minis are here. Like this is a great example where you basically took a handout and made that a book, and you still have a journal section which has your book in it. It has it broken down, but you have kind of like an overview page. It's great.
Yeah, thank you. And Carlos, the thing you said there, this is New Game Master Month, so I feel like one of the things that we should also do is just if there's anything that we can help new GMs with, and you just pointed out one to me, which I love, which is please dispel the notion that you need to know everything. I find one of the most rewarding things to do in a game is be like, hold on a second, let me look that up, and I'm going to open up the book or like ask somebody else like if they know the rule for that thing. I feel like there's this like performative element that people expect of a GM, especially if you watch things like Critical Role or the Adventure Zone or whatnot. You like kind of expect the GMs to just be like totally like on top of it. I feel like a GM who like looks at the book is telling you, I'm committed to giving you a good game right now. I'm committed to I'm invested and I want to get it right. And like, we are all here to enjoy each other's company. We can do that. And like, I'm not going to ruin anyone's day, but
and that feeling that when you compare yourself, like it doesn't help that there's literally a camera on you right now. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't help that you're literally on a screen where you watch, professionals play, or you watch like things that are produced with a whole team behind them, but you yourself put that on yourself. Like you're just you in your like living room, and there's like 20 people behind the scenes helping those other people out.
Yeah,
definitely don't put that on.
I was going to wait for my little segment to talk about this, but I want to sort of jump in here and say that we've seen some really, really cool implementations of Roll20 stuff. And one of the things I'm most pleased about, because I didn't know what anybody was going to talk about until we came into this, right? I didn't see Shane's presentation before this. But the fact that we've spent a lot of time that people have been using their page spaces for showing people what things look like, handouts and views, rather than battle maps, I think is a really great point. But one of the things I really want to call out for new GMs is that we are showing sort of the outer limit of what can be done, either purchased, if you purchase these modules, or build yourself. But to run a good game doesn't require any of these things any more than it requires that you made a prop letter on parchment with a real wax seal or anything. Like having that element is great at your in-person game. Having some of these elements is great in your Roll20 game, but they are not key to the experience. And just as we say in the Roll20, in the New Game Master Month program, that when you look at how encyclopedic your knowledge of the rules needs to be, which is to say not, and how encyclopedic your knowledge of the setting needs to be, which is not, your knowledge of how to use your virtual tabletop environment, whether it's Roll20 or anything else, also doesn't need to be that, right? Like feel free to pick and choose these elements that work for you, and the ones that make your game easier, particularly if you're buying an off-the-shelf module. Also, feel free to ignore the ones that don't, and do not feel like you have to know all of these things or use all of these elements to deliver a great game.
I think Charles is totally right, and and in fact, if you're a brand new gamer and if you're new to Roll20, you're probably going to have way more fun keeping things as absolutely simple as possible on the screen, so that you can focus on your imagination and the fun of portraying all these characters, right? And you'll gradually get accustomed to the technical side of things and to building up your space and the form factor, the whatever you want to call it, right? All the things that are visually very cool, right? We've all put a lot of time and energy into doing that. But the core of the game is not this stuff, right? It's your imagination. So I absolutely agree, and I encourage everybody to stay focused on that.
In a moment, I'm about to show something I made myself. It's not a product that's available for sale. Converting an actual physical scenario at Quick Start into a simple Roll20 thing, and you can play RuneQuest with a battle map or without. So I'll show a little battle map and stuff. When we're ready to switch.
I really like to think of it as like what everyone just said. I like to think of it as like Christmas decorations outside, right? Christmas decorations outside and inside. You pass by, you're like, wow, I want my house to look like that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to have the best Christmas, right? Like you can still have a really good Christmas without spending 100 watts of power to like every single week. Like every single room has like a Christmas tree and all these ornaments and whatever. Also, that person took years making that or putting that together, or maybe spent hundreds of dollars putting that together, and time going out there to put it together, So like all this stuff, all this work goes into it, and it is something that, you guys do and you're committed to it and you love the craft. But like, if you're just starting out and you're new, just like we're talking about New Game Master Month, don't put that on you. Like,
and cherry pick the things you like. I mean, as you might, the best creators are the ones who steal, right? If you find things that you like, pull them out of context. The great thing about these modules is that like they look all pristine and nicely made. You can wreck them, you can destroy them, because you can always make a brand new game with the same module and it'll start fresh. You'll never affect the core. You'll never affect the source. So you can just steal stuff, put it in your own game, and like if you find things that you like, have at it. Do anything you want to. You're never going to hurt it, and you will learn how to use some of the tools just by virtue of tweaking and hacking and breaking. So, like, I look at a lot of Roll20 stuff. Like, I look at Pinterest. I'm like, that's cool that you did that. Like, I don't want to do all this stuff, but I like that one thing. I'm gonna maybe steal rollable tables for backgrounds, right? And I think there's a lot to grab if you're based on.
Awesome. Let's go to Todd. Todd, show us what you got. Let's learn about it.
So, Runequest is a fantasy role-playing game set in a Bronze Age setting. We have a quick start that is 48 pages, just like pretty much every quick start. It's got half rules, half a scenario, and I have converted that over to being a Roll20 adventure. Let's do a little screen sharing. There we go. So here I just took a map that is from the PDF put it in here so that players have just a place to start, so they can see the setting of the adventure, the fact that we have a place, that people live in places, and that we're going to be traveling across land. I could drop tokens around here to indicate the party's movement, but I don't feel an exact need. Most RPGs are best, I think, when it's theater of the mind, and getting down to a battle map when absolutely required. You can convert all types of stuff. We have a massive set of community-made RPG scenarios, Runequest scenarios, on RPG Drive-Thru. They'll all be simple things like this with characters, the story, NPCs, and if you just put it into Roll20 yourself, you can further support your character's adventure. Here, I've set up a quick little room that just has some characters on the battle map. Here we have tokens. These are from the RPG Drive-Thru. We have tokens that are made to kind of suit our Bronze Age setting by Dario Carollo. You can find him on RPG Drive-Thru, and he just makes these little tokens that you can adapt however you need. We use the tokens a lot for trying to do the combat because we have a complex initiative system, but just clicking on these guys and adding them to a turn order allows you to, well, why did that appear? Allows you to get the initiative going. I'll get into that when we get to a character sheet. But there we go. So the character sheet has your basic art and text. Again, this is taken from the quick start. And then we get into a really complex sheet that's got tons of information to display. The runes our characters are based on. Percentile-based skills are on a different sheet because we have a lot to cover here. So just like Delta Green, Call of Cthulhu, a lot of other percentile systems, I could end up rolling a Charm, which this Vanessa character is not particularly good at. Or I could orate a particularly good story by clicking on this die roll, and it will appear in the journal just like all the others. In fact, she got a special success, which produces a better results than a regular success. Good job, Vasana. You can do combat off of here. You can cast your spells off of here. Everyone has magic. We have some of the basic spells that modify your character set here so that you could say, I have the strength spell on, and now all the modifications are put into your character. When you roll for combat with a battle axe, you're going to get a result that tells you, wow, critical. She's just killing it today. And by killing it, I mean 17 points on the left arm because we have hit locations. This will roll all of that information for you. But should she have fumbled, the fumble table is built in here. You can roll a fumble result. If the person you're attacking, the creature you're attacking is not exactly a humanoid, which is the basic chart, you can roll an alternate hit location chart. So all these are built in here. How do we take a module and turn that into a character? Well, you would go into the journal. You would add a character sheet. You would then take a token from the board if you want. Oops, there we go. You select a token. You could add art. You could add a name. They put in a basic name. I love it. Let's just go with that. And then you're going to have a character sheet where you can add all this information in. There's a quick sheet. There's the full sheet, which the PCs might want to use. You saw that earlier for Vasana. It's kind of slow to load, apparently. Huh. Let's go to the NPC sheet. Well, I haven't actually entered any information in. That's probably... There we go. So you would just enter your strength, your constitution, all that you need. I don't need a full character sheet for every character. So I made, we have an NPC sheet option as well. And so the NPC sheet is just a simple one sheet that's got, not even one sheet, it's like 3/4 of the sheet that has all the real basics so that this faithful follower of Vishidan the Shaman a sentient baboon, can participate in combat, although he never would because, as we can see here, he is an apologetic coward.
Apologetic.
Sorry, but I can't fight you today.
You're doing great. You're doing great, Vishy. I'm here in case anyone comes up behind us.
Not just hiding, but also, wants you to feel good about him hiding and running away from you.
Right. You're never going to get more than that from me. I'm just telling you how it is. He could be casting up some heal spells or what have you. But an NPC sheet really narrows down the amount of work that you need as a game master because you just put in the basics for the monster, for the bandits, for what have you, and you're ready to go. Copying this information from any of the adventures goes pretty fast. And then once you have your character, you can move them down to whichever folder you want, just for organization. Except for when you miss. And this is all organized. You can show it to the players if you ever want to. I probably would do so with Cousin Monkey. There you go. And possibly you have multiple screens, as I do today. We have the ability in Roll20 to pop out the character sheets into a new window, which you can drag around and move on to a second screen if you want, so that you can keep the character such that it is not covering the actual action that's going on for the map.
You could also double click the top bar and it'll minimize it for you on your screen, so you don't have to keep going back to the journal tab. So double click Cousin Monkey. Right. Yeah. Which
is great for the game. Oops.
Yeah.
Did it wrong. Which is great for the game master because he's going to probably want to have several NPCs ready to go. So, we do have an initiative. Well, let's see. Let's talk about dice. We had built-in dice on the character sheet, but that's not always going to be what you need. Sometimes you want to just roll, flat percenter roll. Boom, there you go. Let's go back to the journal view so you can see that. Sometimes you want to do something complicated by 3d12. You wouldn't really use that in this game. But I want to point out to any people who are new to Roll20 and to other new game masters that we have all these simple things. In fact, if you play Fudge, they have those special Fudge dice. And if you want to do something crazy, you can put it together here with the advanced roller. It's quite nice, including reroll options of things that you've already done.
That's one of my favorite tips to tell a new user. So I'm so glad that someone said it on this stream is, if you can pop that out, even if you just double click that icon right there, it'll pop out the advanced
make a window for it too.
And you can just, when you're beginning and trying to explain to new users, they think about the dice, like, where are my dice? Where are they at? And a lot of times they might not have a character sheet that they can automatically click on, or maybe there's something that they need to roll that they can't click on. Just having that, you can resize it, put it in the corner for them, or tell them to put it in the corner and save it for later, and they could just quickly click on it as they go. That's
sure. And to do your own game system or whatever it is, you can set target numbers for above or below, and it will tell you if you succeeded. You can have for multiple dice do all kinds of crazy things like compounding or exploding dice. So the dice roller is pretty versatile. We have an initiative system in which the characters will go in a turn order. There's an ability here to sort the turn order. Ascending for us because we go from 0 to 12. And it is simply a matter of you have to make sure that the player has got their token selected because they are assigning an initiative to that character. But for us, you would then go and say, I'm going to use a weapon that goes in strike rank 7, and it'll put a 7 in there for turn order. You can see it over here on the journal. Keep losing the window. And then once everyone said, I'm going to use my lance, I'm going to cast a spell, I'm going to do this. Or sometimes if someone wants to do multiple actions, like you can generally cast some of the quick spells very fast and do more than once per turn, the Game Master can help out by adding you in more than once. Both the player and the character have the ability to modify what's going on here, so they can say, no, this is taking longer because I'm walking over. So I'm going to adjust that to add on whatever I need. And then set them to ascending order, and the game master's ready to say, okay, Harmas, now it's time for you to do your 0 strike rate action. Please remind me what that was. And then they'll roll the dice for their own action. Taking a complicated game system, Runequest is kind of in the middle of the line. I've definitely seen more complicated games, but Runequest with its hit locations, as you can see here on my body chart, with critical hits and special hits, being able to use Roll20 to just master all that complexity is super awesome. And when people build character sheets that specifically use the game system, that really allows someone to step in new as a game master and have most of the rules already figured out for them by just running it off of the character sheet.
Yeah.
So Roll20 is a great way, I think, for new game masters to step in and have more confidence about running the game system when it's built into systems like the dice rollers, the initiative orders, and things like that.
In a lot of ways, I think that the things that we do in Roll20 to make the game look efficient and smooth and faster are also those like on-ramp tools to be like, click here to roll this thing. And normally in the game, you need to know how all of those rolls were compiled, but we've put it there, and it's like, oh, cool. And you can kind of reverse engineer it. You can mouse over the rolls usually and see what was rolled, and you can see what it did. But they're so good to have that.
Let me go back and show that a little bit. If I had modifiers on a roll, this would have told me by mousing over the roll, and it would told me your modifier plus your roll equals this. The whole damage that was listed on the weapon is listed here. And I believe up here we had a critical success. So she gets full damage that the weapon was capable of doing, which was 20 plus her strength bonus. It tells you how that was determined here.
Yeah, that's one thing I actually have found I love in those automated things is being able to mouse over and see the formula of how it got to that 21. You know, so that if like it's happened to me in running games where somebody will roll for something and then a minute, like a second later, they'll realize, oh shoot, I shouldn't have had that plus 20 bonus. That wasn't a critical hit; it was just a normal hit or whatever. So I can say, well, you know what? Don't re-roll anything. Just mouse over it. Tell me what the initial roll was, and we'll stick with that. And you can really speed things up.
Sure.
And, I mean, that's one of those things that kind of comes with mastery, right? The more you use the system, the more you sort of learn those little ins and outs that can just enhance the experience.
And that's one of the points. If we're moving into what I'm saying is my little segment is to talk about the difference between mastery of a system and making that system the tool that supports where you are right now. Because I could totally imagine somebody who started the New Game Master Month program back in early January, and they've been reading if you're running your game on Roll20, here's the thing to do, and they're doing all this prep, and they get to this seminar and they're like, holy crap, my game's tonight, and I don't have any of this stuff. Like, don't cancel your game. We're talking about all the stuff that you can take advantage of if it works for you. But at the end of the day, this is a tool that's designed to make your life easier, and you should be using it pretty much only to the extent that it makes your life easier. And you can come all the way down to the basics, right? Like if all you're doing with Roll20 is to give you video of your players and have a place to show handouts to them, that's fine, right? There is nothing that says that when you call for a roll, the player can't pick up a die.
That's true.
Roll it on the table there and say, I got a 16, right? Like that is perfectly legit. There's lots of advantages to doing it in Roll20. You've got that record of it. You've got the mouse over that breaks it down. You've got a tabletop where everybody sees the result at the same time. You've got all these different elements of it that where Roll20 can both make it easier and in some ways better, but take advantage of what you want to take advantage of, right? You want to roll your characters off of a paper character sheet that you've got on your players have on the table in front of them at their individual houses. That's cool. That is perfectly fine. Do not feel like any of this stuff is going to slow down your game or the fact that you may not have this stuff prepared is going to make your game something that you can't run successfully. I think Carlos's great thing about all the decorations outside the house is really good. Your Christmas is not going to be ruined because you only have $100 worth of decorations for your house when your neighbor has 1,000, right? And if 1,000 is what you want and that's something you build up over the course of the next 2 or 3 Christmases, great. but it's not necessary.
Yeah, I always find, for new Game Master Month, you're always thinking like you're a new Game Master, but they all don't have the same problems, right? They all don't have the same issues. So some of them could be, to be a new Game Master, you want to start. One of my problems is I want to be a new Game Master and I want to start playing right away. I want to start, and that might not always be, math might not be your thing. Maybe that's a really hard part. And sometimes learning these games means learning the mechanics of them, because you can't do the part that you want to, which is the fun story part. That might not, the mechanic part, the numbers part, the crunch might not be the part that you're really into, but it's so built into the game. And something like this, where the character sheet does the math for you, I'm not saying never learn it. You might want to learn it, but you can really get away with not, right? Like you can really learn, like almost every game here, you can learn how to play, how to run it for like entertainment purposes, and not learn the mechanics and why it works exactly. Like you can drive a car without knowing how to put a car together, is what I'm saying. Right. We can. Everyone here on this panel has built cars, is what they're showing you. Right. They're popping the hood open. They're like, "Oh, well, look at this great stuff."
Check out my VA. Yeah.
You could be watching this thinking like, "Oh, I'll never be able to make a car like this." Well, it starts with starting with. For some people, they can open up a book with nothing, see a bunch of gears, see a bunch of parts, and put it together. That's fine, and that's how it's been for a very, very long time. A lot of times you've had to do this, and a lot of people have mentors, right? Almost everyone talks about like, oh, I was shown how to do this by someone else. I was shown how to play. I was a player first. But everyone on this panel today has made the car, has given it to you, and then broken down how the car works. So for me, I'm a person that learns through scenario and reference, So having all of these as a really good example, and then also having the car run is very important. Actually, let's go. Thank you so much, Todd. Let's go to Charles, and you can break down your stuff.
Well, so that's more or less what I want to talk about. So I'm already, between jumping in a little bit earlier to talk about some of the things, and what I just said is kind of the only other topic that I was going to cover, because I'm not going to go into a Numenera setup on Roll20. But what I am going to say is, for your GM, if you're playing a game like Numenera that's very theater of the mind, and perhaps it doesn't come with a prepackaged thing, or perhaps you're running any of these other games and you do not already have an element that you can buy, because I think Todd was showing off what he had done, but you can't buy the adventure that was covered in New Game Master Month, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct, Todd?
No, we don't have that available on Roll20. In fact, because this is our quick start and seeing the great works of the other people, I've had only these couple of weeks to prepare, and I'm going to make an initiative to make the quick start a Roll20 product.
Yeah, but I think it's a great example, because your quick start, it can be downloaded as a PDF for free. So if you have the product that you're running, particularly if you have it in PDF, and that would certainly be the case in the Runequest one, one of the great benefits that you have is you have just a screen grab, right? So like I'm on a Mac, a Command-Shift-4, and then I drag across the space, and boom, those images that we were seeing from the others, you want to show somebody, for example, from the Numenera adventure, you want your players to see the body of the Ravage Bear. So there's an illo on page 369 in that adventure. You go there, you screen grab that, you drag it onto your Roll20 page, and this is how you can use the Roll20 tool in a much more impromptu way that doesn't involve some of the complex setup we've been talking about if you buy that setup from the company. Same with the maps and the diagrams, the other illustrations, images of the NPCs, all of that. Screen grab it out of your PDF, drop it in there, and that is 90% of what you need to make the most of the platform to enjoy it. I'll also point out that, particularly in this day and age when maybe we haven't been together in person with our gaming group for the better part of a year, on Roll20 you can set how much video space the players get. I recommend using the largest view for seeing the players' faces. Alternatively, you can not do video on Roll20 and keep Zoom open on a separate screen so that everybody can see each other, because that's a huge part of tabletop role-playing games is the social interaction aspect of it, and the VTT is a virtual tabletop, right? It's focused on what people are seeing on the table. So the general point I'm making is that use these tools in the way that serves what you're trying to accomplish best. When you have the ability to jump into like the Delta Green scenario where you have all the tools right there, you've got a really detailed character sheet, and if that's convenient for you, and you've had the time to set up the characters, great. Enjoy it. It will make your game better. On the flip side, if all you're doing is grabbing a few screenshots, throwing them onto the pages on Roll20, and then you're rolling dice and using paper character sheets, that is also perfectly fine. 100% perfectly fine, and you'll have a great time. You'll have a great Christmas.
Yeah. Well, and Charles, I think you kind of pointed out like the want my Christmas to look like that one model, which is that these are all things that can and really should be incremental. Like there's really no reason to even try or to even want as a new game master to look like to look like Matt Mercer or anybody with like these incredible high production value, because one, as Carlos said, they have 20 people behind them making them look this good, right? Like no one is actually as good looking as Carlos is in this thing. This is just this is fiction, right?
This is all CGI. I work on
CGI. Exactly. Like there's
Carlos does not exist.com.
It's beautiful in the world, right? It's all CGI. But the other thing is like, even forgetting that that's all has tons of stage production and all this other value, even just to like ramp up your skills, like. I think one of the biggest frustrations I've seen is like new GMs like feeling like I got to get it all. I got to learn all the rules. I got to have a great story. I got to be super engaged. I got to shift spotlight perfectly. I've got to, have quippy accents. I've got to, and like you really don't. And I think Charles, one of the things the biggest thing I took away was like build up your Christmas set bit by bit, year by year, right? Do it as works for you.
One thing that I always think about and will tell people when people ask about. That they act like they feel a little lost coming in as new gamers, new game masters. When I started playing these games, I was really young. It was like me and my best friend in 5th grade, whatever it was, right? We were 10, 11 years old. We didn't know anything about anything, but we loved the core concept of you're playing make-believe, but it's within this sort of a structure, and you're keying on these particular characters, and you have dice that keeps it unpredictable, and go, right? And that's what we did. And we didn't bother to learn all the details until we had really gotten into it. We were both gifted kids, and so as soon as we realized there were lots of details, we glommed onto them like maniacs, right? But we were sucked in by just the fun of imagination and making it up, So we didn't know exactly how half the stuff in even basic D&D was supposed to work, right? But you have the core idea of what do you do? I do this. Okay, roll a die, and run it. Right? You have those ingredients, you can have a blast. Everybody at your table can.
For sure.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, like, you're sitting at the table, you're a new game master for the first time. Like, everyone here has played a game where they got the rules wrong and they still had a really good game. Like never. Oh yeah, I forgot. Actually, we have a board of perfect games online. SeanNetner.com. Just go there. Every single one.
My very first D&D book was Legends and Lore, and that's what I played out of. Not the Player's Handbook, not the DMG. I just like, these gods are cool. I don't know. I play Hercules.
Got straight to 50th level.
Yeah, I don't know.
There is definitely, like, if there's one piece of advice I can give new game masters, there is, like, you're going to go out, you're going to look for more tools. You're going to look for tools like Roll20. You're going to look for books. You're going to look for modules like people have created before. You're going to watch YouTube videos. If you're doing it in person, you might pick up minis or assets on the marketplace. There is one tool that you have that you should really start with, and it's the one tool that can change everything in your entire game. You have it, and no one on this panel has it, and that's the knowledge of the people that are at your table.
Exactly.
Like, you know what they like, you know who they are, and you know how to talk to them, and you have fun with them without any tools on a daily basis. So you're already more than halfway there. Start, whenever I talk to people, I'm like, start there, start with them and think about what they like and what they'll enjoy, and don't put so much pressure on yourself, because you guys hang out in your basement all the time. You know what I mean? And there's no knowledge. You don't plan beforehand. You're not nervous those days. So don't be nervous on these days, for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, don't be afraid of delegating over some of the things to the players if they want. If someone is a rules lawyer, then just have them be the rules lawyer. Have them be the reference by which you make your final decisions as a game master, because they have the rulebook open as you're playing. If someone is already a game master and they're in your game as a player, ask them to help mentor you, or to affirm that what you're doing currently is the best thing for the party, and you'll grow your confidence that way. If someone else has more experience doing Roll20 than you do, then consider sharing the GM role with them so they can actually help with moving characters or showing sheets or changing which page you're on.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with getting everyone to be a full participant. It's a collaborative game. There's nothing wrong with it being a collaborative process too.
Yeah, I think something that we're all kind of saying in different ways is to make your game your own, right?
Yes.
Especially as a game master, it is very much your game, even down to the rules that you are using. When someone says that you get a rule wrong, your players will usually not even notice, right? When you get a rule wrong. And that's actually how I started getting interested in design. Was, I don't remember what it was, but I got a rule wrong in some game session, and it worked. And I wound up thinking later, well, why not do it that way, right? So even that is kind of you engaging with your own creativity and your own imagination. And just as this is a tangent, but as an alternative model to Shane starting when he's in 5th grade, I started when I was in my 20s. I did not start role-playing. I role-played once when I was 8, and then I didn't do it again until I think I was 25 or something like that. So there's no cutoff. This is, you can take this very unserious business as serious as you want to.
Right.
And so long as you're having fun, you're doing it right.
100%. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, guys.
Questions? Q&A?
Yeah.
If there's anything, what do you think?
Yeah, if you're in the chat right now and you have questions, they could be basic Roll20 questions. They can be new GM questions. That's what we're here for. But also, if you have questions on the games that you saw today, ask them. Ask away. I'm sure everyone is more than happy to talk about it and will be very proud to talk about it, talk about their work. So that's what we're here for. So definitely drive in there. While we wait for questions, I'm going to open it up to you guys. I was reading last night the new Game Master Month website. Also, a little plug for that, www.newgamemastermonth.com. Also, you could tell my age because www. I don't think anyone says that anymore. That was like a thing at one point. I don't know.
You didn't start
Only
with
80s and 90s kids will know.
Yeah, right.
Al Gore would be so proud of you.
Thank you, the inventor of the internet, obviously. But yeah, I mean, it's a great website. There's awesome posts on here that I'm seeing, and it really breaks it down. I was just going through some of them, and I put to the side, this one's entitled Encounters, the meat of the adventure, which I love. And my question to everyone on the panel is, what do you feel like is the meat of the event, or what do you personally like to be the meat of the adventure? When I explain that, I guess if you grew up eating meat, a lot of times it is on your plate for dinner, it is 50% meat and then mashed potatoes and maybe a vegetable in there somewhere. Mashed potatoes isn't a vegetable, by the way. But yeah, so what would be the meat? What would you call, your go-to?
I would love
meat?
to jump in on that.
Yeah, let's hear it.
It is the stakes that the players have. The reason why that they have to do what the objective of the adventure is. If the stakes aren't important, if it's, oh, this cat's stuck in a tree and it's like, Why do I need to help? No, it's my village is going to die. All my relatives will suffer. This is something that's integral to the community that my character is a part of. Therefore, the reason why we have to go and risk our life and limb is because there's stakes involved.
I love it.
That creates the core of the story.
That is, and it goes great with that analogy for meat, and steak. Steak spelled differently, obviously. The other part of that meal would be the baked-in plot line, like the baked potato plot line, and the corny part of your adventure. I think that is the full scope of tabletop games.
You can't deny that a little corn on the side.
Yeah, a little corn
it rounds out the dish.
I'm just glad the cat didn't get entered into that sequence. Good job, all.
No, were you going to say something? No, you were about to say something, right?
Yeah, I was going to say kind of my guide when I'm running a game in any system to when I know, and this isn't, I don't really think that this is kind of the meat of a scenario, if that's what we're talking about, but my own rule for, not rule, yardstick for when my players are kind of feeling immersed and the story is progressing is when I stop talking. When they, and it's not less players figuring out what their logistics are going to be than kind of in character interaction. That's and that's my style of play. Folks who are really interested in kind of like battle map and combat, that's going to be you will maybe be using a different yardstick. But for me, when my players start arguing with each other in character, that kind of thing, that's when I know, like as Todd was saying, like the stakes have started to come through for them because they're invested and they are trying to figure out how to encounter this conflict that has been set in front of them.
Yeah, and if I can sort of do something that ties what Todd said and Noah said together, is that one of the sort of easiest ways to get from what Todd said to what Noah said is through your NPCs. I do want to say I want to avoid getting into too much of like 400 level coursework on GMing because New Game Master Month is very much about overcoming the things that make it, not putting up complications that scare away prospective GMs. But if you can create NPCs that are part of that core conflict, this NPC's village is going to die, or this NPC's relatives, or whatnot, and the players really relate to that character, and they care a lot about it, then you'll also get to that point that Noah's talking about, where what they want to do, like they want to almost grab hold of that narrative, take control of it, and help that person that they find so sympathetic, interact with them, and so on and so forth. That's a great technique to embed a character, an NPC into your story that your players love, and then put that person in peril. That's a great way to both get that inner PC interaction and that high stakes feel into your game.
I think, that's really good. And I think that's a really good to connect that. If you're a problem that I hear a lot from, or a question that I get a lot from new game masters is like, my players don't role play enough. I want them to role play, because a lot of new game masters might be coming in from watching Critical Role or listening to the Adventure Zone, and they expect even if they prepped and they did all this, they expect an audio drama or a visual drama when they're playing their game. And one, that's really hard. That's really hard to expect people who don't have training, who might not be familiar with tabletop games, to know that. But if you want to get there, have those conversations, and to help them get immersed, exactly what Charles said, like, come up with NPCs. You have to be that example. If that's what you want, you have to be that example for them at the table, where you're, playing along, where you're becoming these characters, if you expect other people to become them.
Yeah, and the characters you develop as the game master don't need to be tremendously deep, right? The key to it is to figure out figure out how they're sympathetic, right? How they make sense to themselves, especially from my perspective, especially the villains of the piece. The thing that I enjoy the best about running games really is getting into the heads of the NPCs that I'm putting in front of the players, in particular their antagonists. Right. And if I can kind of wrap my head around why this antagonist, who to the player characters is an absolute appalling villain, why that character is convinced they're in the right and they're entirely justified, and anybody that thinks otherwise is a lunatic, or whatever, however you want to phrase it. If you can make every character that you have in some way, if you can see them through their own eyes, and that will be a huge help, even if it's just the most simple thing, to presenting them to the players and making the players interested, and making every encounter they have something that is worth having, because they're not simple. It's never just sort of a binary, okay, this is a bad character, this is a good character, this is a friend, this is an enemy. And the key for me, the key to that is always just to kind of make even the villains sympathetic in my head, so I can present them a way that the players respond to. That's a huge tool, if you can, that I don't think takes a ton of work to master. You just have to sort of keep it in mind.
Yeah, and listen to the people at the table. We have a question here. It is any advice for new dungeon masters to get their first game done? Game masters to get their first game done. I take this question as I offered to you, but I think what they mean is just like, how do I just ship it? Like, they probably have an idea, they probably know, they want to run it. How do they ship it out, and actually, how do they do it?
Yeah.
Well, I would say that there's two parts to the question, right? So one part of that is going to be, how do I, I've got an adventure idea, how do I take that to being ready to run? And I will point out that New Game Master Month actually doesn't address that. In the New Game Master Month program, it focuses, all of the representatives here are representing companies that have put forth a specific published adventure to work from, so that we could remove that sort of variable from the process. The other half of the question is how do I go from thinking about it to actually making it happen? And the New GM Month program takes you through a bunch of steps. So I don't know if this particular questioner was actually a participant in the program, but the second step of the program is literally schedule your game, right? Because, and you do that, the second step, back in the first week in January, so that you could run your game this weekend, to give you 3.5 weeks of time to be able to make that possible. But the point is, identify your players. And so if you've got a gaming group that you game with all the time, right, you know who those people are. If you are trying to set something up from the ground up, then just identify people that you want to spend 4 hours with and have a good time, right? 4 people, 5 people that you think would fit well, identify them, send them an email, say, this is what I'm going to do. I'm proposing that it's going to be Friday the 27th at 7 p.m., but I'm flexible on that. We can talk about it, but I'm going to run this game. I'd like you to join me. And then do it. Put it on your calendar. That's kind of...
Calendaring is so big, right?
The thing is actually just do it, My feeling about starting a first game, and this is starting later games as well, but when you're sitting down at the table, this really ties into sort of what Noah was saying as well, is how quickly can you get to the point where they're talking instead of you're talking? And for me, the quickest way to do that is to immediately present, as soon as you've got the character sheet sorted out, as soon as everybody's ready to play, is to immediately kick off the game with a problem that you do not have an answer to, and see where they are. There's a landslide and it's going to bury the town. All of your siblings and relatives live in that town, and also your fortune is probably in. This is your home, and you're seeing it from afar. I don't know how you're going to stop this landslide. I don't know if you're going to get the people out of the town. I don't know what you're going to do about it. But because I don't have an answer, and I'm not thinking first they've got to do step 1 and then they've got to do step 2. I have no impetus to be well, you could do, this. Maybe you could hint at things. You see people running away. This is the chances. But for me, it's really present this problem that doesn't have a simple solution.
I would add to that by starting the role playing by creating it as a dilemma. So they have to choose between 2 different outcomes. During the landslide, they can save 2 out of 3 groups. They could save their treasures, they could save their family, or they can save the hospital. And there's no correct answer. There's going to be a little bit of failure in there, and that's just built in. But now the characters have to develop stakes for which of those choices are the best. Similarly, if you to bring in the excellent villains, another dilemma could be that there's two villains or a villain and a lieutenant, and they really only have a choice of immediately stopping one of them. So they have to talk out amongst themselves, what direction are we really going to go in here in order to achieve our ultimate goals? And what do we have to allow ourselves to fail at? Or they could try like Batman did and try and save both. And probably fail. And failure is dilemmas, crises, disasters are what drive these narratives in RPGs. So they make for the interesting story. And it's them choosing how that story is going to go that takes the weight off of the new game master.
It's often the very first big failure that actually I find drives a game. It's many times like you're playing along, you didn't think this was going to be a big deal. You figured they'd probably make the roll. Oh no, the house collapsed and like they lost somebody they cared about. And now that is like the player's driver for the rest of the game is like, I will bring them back to life, or I will never let that happen again, or like I will find the person who caused that avalanche. And you're just like, oh, I didn't anticipate this being like your character arc, but it can really become it when they have that first big failure that really hurts, that really like shapes a character.
And you could find those in any adventure. They just happen.
Yeah.
I would also argue that particularly with new players or players who tend to have more of a passive element, or new players that just don't know what to do, like there's nothing wrong with starting in media res. And this is both compatible with what was described, big issues like a giant landslide coming down, or just a standard dungeon crawl, right? Skip you're in a tavern, and who do you do? Who do you talk to? Oh, there's a guy with a map. Okay, now you're traveling through the wilderness. Skip all that. Just say, okay, the four of you are standing outside the entrance of the dungeon. There's the door. The darkness beckons. And let them go from there, because you can fill in those details in the background, and unless they're integral to the story, nobody's even going to care three encounters within. So like that's if you've ever run games at conventions, right? You have a 4-hour time slot. You got to get things done. You have to get rid of all that first act stuff. It can also work really well for just getting an immediate engagement from your players if your players are inexperienced or are going to be the types of players who maybe love the game but are not the ones that drive things, and they kind of stare at each other and say, I don't know, what do we do next, right? Some players are like that, and there's nothing wrong with that. But
sure.
Like, an immediate res start is a great way for a new campaign to just kick off like that, really strong and fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love all these, and I wrote them down too, because I believe that they're all stuff that we hear constantly, right? Like we constantly learn from our own games, and we constantly try to impart. And it's also reading these, it's knowledge that if someone told you starting out, you wouldn't focus on that. Like you wouldn't even think about that stuff, right? Like there's so many times where like you think back, like, oh, if I could do it over, what would I have done differently? And it's these things. But a lot of times as a new game master, we focus on other things like making sure the minis are properly painted and stuff like that. But yeah, these are great. Choose a date. Number one, you can't have a game if you don't choose a date, and you're not going to finish your game if you don't choose a date too. So having that accountability definitely helps. Choose a question you as a game master can't answer for them. A lot of times we end up like as a new game master, you might have these great story arcs and this linear like play in your mind. Everyone here on this panel will tell you it's not going to work out like that.
Right.
They're going to get distracted by a rock somewhere that you didn't even think about, and all of a sudden the story's about this rock. And everyone
talks okay. That's the important thing, is that is okay. That's perfect, because that's your game, right? Like that's where the adventure is going. And the last one is skip the exposition, right? And start at the door of the dungeon. Like if movies have taught us everything, is like we can flash back in our Citizen Kane thing. We can tell you what was going on like beforehand, and just get them involved and get them having those stakes, Yeah. It's even easier to do that in backstory, right? Like after you've been in the dungeon for 3 or 4 encounters, it might be easier to answer the question, why is my guy exploring? Versus being in the tavern, and the GM says, "Okay, so tell me, why does your character care about going out?"
Right. Yeah. I just made this guy up. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. Well, you've got context at that point, right? At this point, you've you've had a few encounters, you've had a few quips. They might not have meant anything, but you mentioned your brother Daryl, and now suddenly like, oh, I'm here because of Daryl, or you beat somebody in the dungeon. You know, it's just you have a little bit to go off of that you didn't have.
I would recommend also, as far as helping a new GM get started and get the first game done, is just keep it simple, right? Don't overplan. And that's something that I see a lot of people talking about running games, that they feel like they're falling into this pit of, you know, I've got this idea and this idea and this idea, and I start building them together, and then I get lost, and then it becomes like, okay, now I'm feeling kind of burnt out, and I haven't even run the game yet, you know. If you're talking about just getting people together to play a game for one slot of 2 to 4 hours, depending on how much time everybody has, you know, in my case, I love to over prepare, right? That's my jam. You know, I love to write. I love to come up with ideas. I love that. That's my favorite thing. But at the same time, I've learned from hard experience that the way that I write things on the page, I can get through maybe 3 pages of material in a game session. Right. So those other 20 pages that I've already written out ideas for, that's not going to happen anytime soon, you know? So if you're a new game master and you're putting ideas down, and you're putting storyline possibilities down, and you're putting down what's happened here and what happens if the characters aren't here, if they don't get involved, you know, bear in mind, you only need 2 or 3, you know, you only need a little bit of material to play that first game. And if you do that much, then either the players are not going to respond to it, in which case, bummer, try something else, or they are more likely they're going to respond to it, and they're going to supply you with all kinds of additional ingredients to build off of. So don't feel like you have to really commit to this big elaborate thing. You know, make yourself rein it in a little bit, keep it simple and keep it easy. And then play and have fun.
Going off that, somebody mentioned this earlier, but you don't have to memorize the rule book before you start playing, right? That's why we have rule books, is for reference. So in terms of like learning the rules about, you know, if you're brand new to a system, learn kind of the core mechanic. For almost any game system you pick up will have 1 or 2 things that it does, right? Like in D&D, you roll a D20, compare it against a number, and that's it. That's 90% or 95% of the game. In Gumshoe, it's a single D6. You roll a D6 against a number that the GM has set. And once you have that down, as you get to the special cases, when you get into combat for the first time, you can pause, and like Sean was saying, taking the time to kind of check a rule in the rule book is actually saying to your players, like, hey, I respect y'all enough that let's make sure we get this right.
Excellent. Yeah. So the other question I had, and we're probably got another 10 minutes left on the stream.
We make it a last minute addition. Cat
okay.
may come in a couple minutes, so I'd love to hang out for at least like 10, just in case, to give her a chance to say hi.
I don't think she's going to be able to make it.
Oh, she's not. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
Well,
but Kat's great.
She is great.
Yeah.
One question that I have, and we touched on it a little bit in this last discussion we just had, was you know, a big part about being a game master that I think a lot of people focus on is all the other stuff that we kind of went over in this entire panel. It's you know, how prepared, how mechanics, stuff like that. But then an even bigger part is managing players and managing players' expectations, and managing your own expectations of players. So like it's a two-way street almost. My question to the panel here is, how do you go about that? What are some of your tips or that you would give a new game master just starting out that might be frustrated with their players, or maybe they're afraid of how to talk to them during the game? Some people have a lot of agencies, some don't have any at all. Like what type of advice would you give new game masters to expect?
So that's something that's near and dear to my heart, running and writing for Delta Green, because Delta Green is a horror game, and as I may have mentioned, we deliberately make it a particularly bleak kind of horror game, and some players are really into that, and some players are really not, and either way, that's totally fine. But the key there is, if you're a game master and you're into that kind of thing, you need to make sure your players are on board, right? And that just takes communication and pardon me, and respect, right? So if you've got one of your group that really is not going to be interested in the Delta Green experience in all of its bitterness, then change it up a bit, right? Choose a different game, and you just got to kind of talk to your players. And sometimes it takes actually playing the game to find that out. And I mean, there are plenty of people who have tried Delta Green, for example, and started off trying to run it more as kind of an action game and more as a little more pulpy, or and they've kind of become frustrated because the rules don't do that very well. Like, they're not built for that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And so, if you what you want to do is pay attention to what the game tells you it's about, right? And most of these games, we write them very deliberately to make the rules deliver on that promise to the best of our ability, right? So when you start reading what the game says it's about, believe it, and expect that that's what's going to happen. And at the same time, make sure that your players know that that's what you expect is going to happen, so that they don't think that they're going to be playing Men in Black, the role-playing game, and find that they're playing, just the victims in Saw.
Right. Well, getting that consent is super important. I mean, like you say, playing the victims in Saw, like, oh, no one would ever do that. But I remember the first time I played Bluebeard's Bride with Sarah Doombringer, who was one of the creators. She's like, I'm going to be torturing you all this whole time, and I'm going to tell you how the story went, so you all know that you're all going to die. It's going to be horrible. You'll be miserable, or maybe you're not going to die. It'll be a worse fate than that. But it was like, but I'm going to tell you the story of the myth, and then we're going to play our game that's sort of based on it. And I think that's huge to not only set expectations, but also to get that buy-in. Like you said, Jane, if they're like, no, we want to play action heroes, like, send them over my way. Like, give them monster.
Right, yeah, play action heroes,
then, right?
Sure.
Like, that's the game for them. But if you don't get that buy-in, I feel like it's really dangerous to proceed beyond that, because that also speaks to consent and safety tools as well. Mm-hmm. Like if people aren't buying at that first level, then it's really hard down the line to get them to buy in when you have actually done something terrible to them. When you've been like, cool, this is a game where people can have these horrible things happen, and you still want to ask, right? You still want to check in, but I think that
it has to be an ongoing thing. An ongoing part of your communication between you and the players is maintaining that sensitivity to, is everybody cool with this, right? If it's a game might go 3 or 4 sessions and everybody's totally fine, but there may be one thing that comes up in a game that one of your players really responds to negatively. And what you want to do as a GM, because you're playing these games with your friends, is be a friend and do your best to recognize that and respect it.
Nothing wrong with, at the end of the game session, inviting all the players to send an email answering the question of, what do we need to change? Are you having a great time already, or do we need to change something?
Thanks. What did you like least?
Yeah. Thanks for taking the risk and trying out this game with me. I feel much more confident that you guys agreed to try it out. But I want to make it perfect, or I want to make it better. It's never going to be perfect. That's a bar too high. And this is your opportunity to get some feedback. And then, don't make it a public affair. Just have them send you emails. And then you can shape things as needed.
Mm-hmm.
I would also throw out there that while I think that choosing the right game for your group and then making sure that the group understands what they're getting in for is super, super important. In addition, it's really going to help you to understand your players. And if you've got a gaming group, again, that you've played with a lot, then you have a leg up on this. If you've got new players or it's a new group for you, some exploration will happen as this goes along. There's nothing wrong with asking about this up front, although be aware that sometimes the players don't know the answer to the question if they're new players, particularly inexperienced. But, some people are very action-focused. Some people are very, they love to dig into the personalities of the NPCs they meet or the details of the mystery that they have. All that, people take different approaches to what they get out of games. Some players are very quiet. Some players are spotlight hogs. Finding ways to sort of be able to accommodate both of them is great. And if the spotlight hog is having a good time hogging the spotlight and the quiet player is fine because they don't like to hog the spotlight or even have the spotlight, that can be a fine relationship. But on the flip side, if they're not fine with it, the spotlight hog is creating a problem, then as a GM, understanding how to sort of mitigate that or making sure you give everybody a chance to be engaged is really important. So you can kind of know that from games you've played with them before. You can ask those questions of them up front with the understanding that some people won't know until they've played exactly what style of player they are. And then being able to accommodate all of that, giving something in your game that lets everybody have their moment to shine. And this is also why in every game, like the classic D&D game, you've got a fighter, a wizard, a cleric, and a rogue, right? Like that's a situation where different encounters will let different players be the one that is really shining at that moment, right? So this encounter is great for the fighter. This encounter is great for the rogue, and everybody has a moment in that game where they got to shine. But even games that are not that sort of class-based or party-based are still going to have the player who likes to approach things through investigation, the player who likes to be the front person when you're interacting with other NPCs, the player who likes to sneak or whatever. So finding ways to make sure that all of those things have moments in the game. And then one last thing is if you have a player that's impatient, this kind of goes back to the in media res thing. I had a GM years ago. We had one player that basically only wanted to come for the fight scenes. He just didn't care about anything else that was in the adventure. So our GM would always start with a combat scene, out of the blue. Okay, the kobolds the gnolls are attacking your campsite. What do? We didn't end the game last session in a campsite. What the heck's going on? We would fight the gnolls, and then we would backtrack a couple of scenes to talk about what had happened during the day that made us at a campsite that night. And that player could be satisfied, right? Because if we spent an hour doing things that weren't fight scenes, that player would actually become disruptive, right? It would become problematic. So get that player something to do. That's sort of an extreme example where you're going, jumping forward in time just to accommodate that player. But you can think creatively about how to make sure that the players that need things out of your game can get them. And a lot of that you won't know in your first game session because you're just not, particularly if you've never gamed with those players or they're inexperienced. But being flexible and thinking about it, or being able to be creative or flexible during your game, or just think about ways that a given scene might be modified. If you've discovered that all your players just love action, and you know that your adventure has this scene that's going to be all investigation and talking to NPCs, just think on the fly about how you might modify that and put a little more action into it to make it work.
Figure out ways that they can beat the information out of people.
Exactly, yeah. Right? Or have to chase, oh my God, the dog stole the important document. Now you've got to have a chase scene through the town or whatever, So.
Yeah. Sometimes you can actually just get to learn the players and how they're going to interact online through video conferencing by having a session 0. It's okay, we're only going to get together for this first hour or hour and a half and make some characters and talk about why we are a group. And then from there, the game master can start explaining what the campaign or the adventure or two or whatever they're going to be is like. Make sure that there's buy-in from everyone, but the stakes are much lower when it's just making the characters, talking about why we have a relationship to each other, that we work together, and making it a nice short one. And that can, if it's going to be something where you make characters, be a really good confidence boost for that first-time game master, because the stakes are pretty low. It's just going to be about rules and talking about background and short.
Yeah.
So that can be a way for you to learn your players.
Yeah. And I also say, also along the lines of a low stakes element, think about maybe not, if you have this grand campaign you want to launch,
Yeah.
Maybe your first game isn't that. You could either just play a completely different game as a one-shot before that to kind of like get to know your group. The other thing you can do is do sort of a prologue adventure that's maybe set in the same setting as your grand campaign, but has very little to do with the actual main events. And that way that everybody gets introduced to the setting and whatnot, again, in a low-stakes environment. And then when you start the big thing that you're really emotionally invested in and you want cool things to happen over the course of many game adventures, like you've already laid some groundwork in terms of both the campaign and in terms of like your knowledge of the players and what they're going to enjoy from it.
I've had a lot of success with a campaign session. A prologue session.
Yeah. Absolutely. Every game you play is the game. There is no like practice. It's your game. Even if you're like, I want to do this grand campaign, it's just like, well, I'm going to do this first one first. That's still going to be really fun. Like you're still going to learn something from it and something you will take into your grand campaign. And there's nothing to say that like you can't change what's happening now into what you want later. Like everything is completely malleable. Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. I think we're about closing up time. I want to go around the screen here. Everyone just, thank you so much. Say your name and where people can find you online if you have socials, or where they can find your games on the Roll20 Marketplace or any other place. We'll start with Charles.
Alrighty. I guess our screen got rearranged here. So Charles Ryan from Monte Cook Games. Of course, you can find us at montecookgames.com. If you're so inclined, you can find me at Charles M. Ryan on Twitter. The only thing I would like to sort of throw in that's content-wise, I just want to talk a little about New Game Master Month. It runs through the course of January, and so if we've got viewers that were part of that course, they've been doing stuff a couple times a week all month long and are hopefully running their first game this weekend. If you didn't do the course, the website site stays up and stays up for most of the year. So at any point, you can go through and just click the button that says Start Here, and it'll bring your first post. You pick one of our 6 games. It'll just give you a step-by-step thing, and do it at whatever pace you like. But nothing says, you won't have the community of this Discord or the Facebook group or any place else. You won't have the seminars like this going on and other support elements, but you can do it at any point that you feel so inclined to do it. And it's a great way. It is a hands-on program that gets you through all the stuff you kind of need to know, gives you some confidence, and it gets you to running a game, right? It's not just like learn a few things and then maybe you run a game. One of the steps is, as we said earlier, actually scheduling your game, picking your players, communicating with them, scheduling the game. So at the end of it, you will run a game. So if you've jumped in on this seminar, on this stream, and hadn't been taking part in it, you have missed the month of January, but you haven't necessarily missed out on the chance to learn the lessons that New Game Master Month offers to you. And as Carlos said earlier, it's newgamemastermonth.com.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Charles. Shane, why don't you take it away? I'll also add that, like, if you're watching this later on YouTube or some type of replay, we'll put all this information that everyone's about to say in the description as well for clickable links. But take it away, Shane.
Okay, thanks. I'm Shane Ivey. I run Arc Dream Publishing, and we publish Delta Green, the role-playing game. So you can find us at arcdream.com. That's Arc with a C. arcdream.com, deltagreen.com, Arcdream LLC on Twitter, and Arcdream we're on Facebook and Twitter and lots of various guises. So, it's me and Dennis Detwiller that run everything with Arc Dream, and we work with all kinds of other authors and who are our longtime colleagues and friends to make games that I can then come on shows like this and warn people not to play.
We're still taking bets on whether the marketing strategy works on that one.
So good, believe it or not.
I mean, it's kind of working on me.
We don't know why we succeed, really. We just sort of say the angriest, most depressing things that we can in our game books, and for some reason, people play them.
Yeah, I love it. It makes me. I only want to be a part of clubs that won't have me as a member.
Groucho Marx.
Groucho Marx. Thank you, Todd. You're up next. Take it away.
Todd Gardner with Chaosium Incorporated. Call of Cthulhu role-playing game is found all over Roll20. There's tons of scenarios you can buy for that. Runequest is something that you would find from our website at chaosium.com. Or we have a community program in which you can find a bajillion scenarios or tokens or art on the RPG drive-through RPG. Sorry, words are important. And we run the gamut from horror to Bronze Age fantasy to medieval knights to witch covens in Spain to cavemen dealing with the Ice Age. We have all types of games. Take a look at our website to find what's going to actually match your group's interest.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Todd. Noah, tell us about yourself and where people can find you.
Yep, I'm Noah Lloyd, the publishing assistant at Pelgrane Press. You can find all of our games at www.pelgranepress.com. We've got a bunch of stuff over there. I mentioned briefly at the top. We've got a couple of collections of games, like micro games, like #Feminism, which is a game, a collection of micro games from a feminist perspective. We've got Honey and Hot Wax, which is a collection of sex RPGs. 13th Age, which is our D20 fantasy game, and then a bunch of games built on the Gumshoe system, like Trail of Cthulhu, but also Time Watch, where you play time-traveling investigative agents. Swords of the Serpentine, which is coming out, I don't have the date on hand, but sometime in the coming year, which I'm really excited about, which is kind of a Lankmar swords and sorcery genre game, also using Gumshoe. Knights Black Agents, which I love and am running a game of right now on Roll20, which is thriller spy meets vampire hunters. You can follow us on Twitter at Pelgrane Press, and Midnight Sub Rosa, which I showed off a little bit earlier in the show, is on the Roll20 marketplace right now. It's 20% off for the month of February for New Game Master Month. And if for some reason you want to follow me personally on Twitter, I'm at Noah Gola.
And
Cool.
the fall of Delta Green, I'll mention. The Pelgrane.
Yeah, thank you.
Well. They licensed Delta Green for a game that we helped them put together.
That's right. Thank you for calling me out on that omission.
Yeah, it's very cool. Ken Hite put it together. It's great.
Awesome.
Really good book.
Yeah, my eyes lit up when you mentioned the Time Agent game.
Mhm.
I've been working on a Time Agent game also called Good Cop, Time Cop.
Okay.
Sean, take it away.
Hey everybody, I'm Sean Nittner. You see him pronouns. You can find me everywhere on Twitter, etc. as at Sean Nittner. I work for Evil Hat, and we produce a number of games. Just to tie this in, we also have a Gumshoe game, Bubble Gumshoe, which is the game of teenage detectives, very Veronica Mars-y. We produce the Fate line. We make Monster of the Week, Blaze in the Dark, and other Forged in the Dark games. Our most recent release, let's see if it comes out, is Agon right there. I've got my Agon shirt on, which is actually a game that I co-authored. I'm connected to, and it's a game of ancient mythic heroes and trying to make their way home. And we just kickstarted Thirsty Sword Lesbians, which is a game about hearts racing and swords crossing, and it's a fantastic, amazing game. Got a huge number of backers, which is really exciting to see how much support we've had for that. And we're doing, as we're finishing the game, we just got the last bits of art in a couple days ago, and I'm now getting all of that up onto Roll20 with the hope that we will have we'll have the module out on Valentine's. Well, I'm not sure. It's close. We'll see if we can do it. But that's my goal, is to release it on Valentine's Day. And we have just a ton of other content on the marketplace. So far, campaign modules, but we're in discussion about making compendiums too. So a lot of Evil Hat stuff is gonna. We have about 60 titles right now, and we'll be adding a ton more. So, yeah, lots of good hat stuff on in the marketplace.
Fantastic, fantastic. And I am, or was, your host for this panel. My name's Carlos Luna. I'm the content creator here at Roll20. And I'm urging everyone to go check out newgamemastermonth.com. A lot of great content out there for new game masters. Give it to a friend, maybe give it to a player who's thinking about running a game. That's pretty good as well. And as always, check out roll20.net. Create your free account today. You can play a lot of these games on there, as well as other ones, ready to go, right at your fingertips. Thank you, guys. Thanks for hanging out and talking and giving all this great advice.
Of course.
Awesome. Have a good night, everyone. Yeah.
Great seeing you all. We're gonna get all covered up by a banner, but it won't a little closing out banner, but it won't mute our voices. So
that's good for me.
But we're not. Just so we know,
that's really good for me. I hope I don't forget that I have to say those things. Bye, everyone.